Kams audio son. You burn the swine when I want you shine. The tree of life, them I want you climb. Cause them heart no kind. Kams, I say them heart no kind. Buxton Massive, Kidaki, Red Hat.
Never joke, never joke, never joke. Oh, money never, money never, money never, money never, money never, money. Now know what you can even money. Money never, money never, money never, money never, money never, money. You can keep, you can even money. When you in a corruption, in a bill tell me money. Now because your money done, you come with conniving money. When you had your pocket full, in a bill tell me money. Now because your money done, you hustle for tell me money. Yes, money never, money never, money, money never, money, money. Now know what you conniving money. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. That's all the money that me walk. A 2 pound note and a guilder piece. A 2 pound note and a guilder piece. A 2 pound note and a guilder piece. That's all the money that me walk. I said money never, money never, money, money never, money, money. I don't want you conniving money.
I invoke the WPA's position that we are engaging in civil disobedience and non-cooperation with the government, and on that grounds I refuse to participate in the interview. The question and struggle, is not personal. Whatever sacrifice as a political activist or a political leader you have to make for your people, you have to make it.
Guyana and Guyanese, at home and abroad. Tune in to Guyanese Morning Time, hosted by Kadaki Amsterdam, where the sun always shines. Guyanese Morning Time, the people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again. We rise up early morning watching Kams TV, where wisdom and knowledge, yes, it is the key. Exposing corruptions over land and sea, where the wicked politician they try to trick me. Guyana is a land for everybody. With 6 races should live in harmony. Is one set of people getting aisle money. Is one set of people doing the tea for it. Beep, beep, Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, they say it's a program that you all can see, sharing your views and your integrity. Like it, comment and share it all around. Pass it to your neighbor, safe and sound. A sad situation going on in this town. The voice of the people is getting trampled down. Out of the mouths of babes and sucklings, which has ordained me to sing. I say Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, fooling the people. You promoting evil. Stop lying to the people. You are a part of the cycle. Stop fooling people. You're promoting evil. Stop lying to the people. people. Politicians, you are a part of the cycle. I say, Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again. They got Brickford, Burke and Mark Benchcop, David Hinds and Kadaki Amsterdam, Sherrod Duncan, Nigel London, Normal Brown and Gavin Matthews. Big up Paslow Port People Governor, Simona Brooms, Robin Simpson, Hampton Green and Winston Jordan. And yes, we can go right on and on. Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again.
The relatives and friends of young Quinton Bacchus, they deserve justice. The family, the relatives and friends of our in Boston, they deserve justice. The family, the relatives and friends of Peter Headley, they deserve justice.
And so when we say that Guyana is an apartheid state, we have the evidence to show.
act wild. Trust me. They don't act wild. Carlo, thank you for your patience. Your life.
Yeah.
That might be another way to look at it. The cup is either half full or half empty. Just now is Labor Day. Morning, morning. Welcome to another program of Guyanese Morning Time. It is 7 hours 23. I'm your host, the BUXTONIAN Kidaki Amsterdam. On Guyanese Morning Time. How are you been, man? What going on? What going on? How are you do? Them a watch me. Have you been good? Have you made some money? Did you get a new job? You start a new side hustle? You start a small business or you start a business? You know, I was told not so long ago, people must stop referring to the thing as small business. The words of your mouth is a determination on your success. Have you started a big business that has started small? That might be another way to look at it. The cup is either half full or half empty. You started a big business, but you've started small because you don't want to rush the brush. You're taking your time to get there. As I wish you success, I wish you success, I wish you success. I wish you growth, I wish you development. I wish that you will command your fair share of the market and you will get access to customers and clientele and that you will grow from strength to strength. And that you would prove beyond a doubt that you're capable. Because you come from a generation of people who have always been capable. They tame the land and they, what they say? Created things. They are the originators of mathematics and science and so on and so forth. And so you come from greatness and greatness you shall achieve. Yes. That's my pronouncement. Today is what? Tuesday? The 25th? Usual day for protests outside of GCOM. So I want to start by asking you this question. If you were asked, how many of you will turn out at GCOM this morning, well, midday, to protest? The evidence is in. Yesterday we spoke about the evidence. We saw dead people as candidates. We saw dead people as nominators. We saw dead people as... We saw overseas-based people as nominators. We saw people who never collected an ID card in this country as nominators. Right? So the evidence is in. We recognize where the fraud is. Right? We recognize where the fraud is. And so, are you prepared to go there and challenge the fraud? How many of you, I'm doing a poll this morning, so just drop me a chat. Drop me a message in the chat. I. Or if you prefer to say me. Good? Let me hear from you if you will be willing to go to protest at 12 o'clock or thereabout in front of GCOM to highlight the fraud. You see, I usually tell you all something. And every day I'm proving it. I say to y'all that your leaders are afraid to call for a big strike or a big protest because they are not confident that they will get the kind of support, the show of support, that will cause the world to believe that it was a successful call and that the leader is effective. Y'all understand what I'm saying? You see, leadership, especially in politics, is about numbers. Numbers are a sign of effectiveness. And so if the leader calls for a strike or the leader calls for major protest and the numbers are small, Then the first interpretation from the press and the detractors are, this person got no clout. Look, they call for certain actions and nobody has paid attention to them. The numbers are small and so on and so forth. You know that, right? And so, if you're calling on your leader to do this and do that and do the other and do the next in your name, it should be a natural thing to understand that you have to build the confidence of your leader. Right? And only when you build the confidence of your leader will you see the real strength, the true strength of your leader. Matthew James, bueno, rest yourself. Thank you for, well, I don't know if I should say thank you for the correction. I don't know what to say to Matthew James right now. Because I don't think Matthew James was following the old discourse. Because he certainly missed the context. Anyways, back to what we're talking about. Good? John C. Paul said he is going. I am going. Note he didn't say I will go. Or I would go. He said I am going. So John is definite in his pronouncement right now. John says that he is going to be in front of GCOM at 12 o'clock today. Right? That's what John says. Janet, on the other hand, is talking in the past. That was her thing. Right? I'm talking about present and future Janet. Who will come out if they were to be called to protest today? So then I feel said that she would. And she's watching from Golden Grove. So at least there's John C. Paul and there is Chandel I feel. Over indicated. I'm waiting for other indications. So by the time the program is finished and I get indications, I will decide if we will go out at GCOM. What do you say there? Because it's Tuesday. Normally we would go out at GCOM for the midday protest, right? But anyhow, back to this discourse. If you're asking your representative or your leader to do this, that, and the other, then you have to embolden your leader or your representative. Because if they are not emboldened, then bet your bottom dollar you're not going to get the kind of actions that you're expecting. You're demanding boldness, but are you making them bold? Right? Are you making them bold? If you look around the world, diplomacy, right? If you look around the world, diplomacy is backed by military might. Don't fool yourself. Diplomacy is backed by military might. And that is why I always say, I have no problem with the opposition going to court. But the opposition must also have a people presence on the streets. Diplomacy is in the court. Might or military might is on the streets. And until we can understand that and live it, we are for the most part going to be like the hamster on the wheel. Right? When the US sends its ambassador, its leader, its ambassador around the world to deliver a message, that message will be treated and be reacted to differently So Guyana sending its ambassador with the same message. Because Guyana, first thing a lot of countries will look at Guyana and laugh and say, this little puny shithole country, according to Trump, sending threatening messages against us or demands to us. No. They don't have the military might. They don't have the power. They don't have the backings for this what they're trying. But when the US or Britain or Canada, even Israel sends such a message, they will react. Take for example, legend has it, and I say legend has it, that Donald Trump sent Pompeo to Guyana to tell Granger, give up the presidency or we gonna murder you. And like a church mouse, Granger give up the presidency. I think he has been so traumatized that up to now he can't find his tongue, can't get his tongue. To say to the Guyanese people, these are the circumstances under which I gave up the government of the day. Trump didn't have to come himself. Trump didn't have to, it didn't reach a point of them having to do anything except talk because of their military might. Why am I explaining all of that? Because I'm saying to you, if you want your leader to be effective, your representative to be effective and impactful, as you believe they can be and they should be, you have to empower them. You have to show military might. You have to show that you have the power to make things happen. And they are only your messengers, and you stand behind them. I'm going to explain this to you. Why am I talking about emboldening your leaders? I'm going to mash it to you right now. You don't understand how when toes going to get mashed, right? So you can take yours out the way. Yesterday afternoon, I received a text message. A WhatsApp forward, as a matter of fact. Let me tell you exactly what it is. A WhatsApp forward. Right? WhatsApp forward. What the WhatsApp forward said. Join us at 11:30 tomorrow for a massive protest outside of GICO. Join us for a massive protest. Outside of GICOM tomorrow. I messaged a person, who is this? Person started trying to convince me that what? They're on the good side. Who is this? Person gave me a name. Who is this? Because a message like that, join us outside of GCOM tomorrow for massive protest, can come from anywhere. I want to know who is it. Who is inviting me to join them to a protest? But by the time I'm trying to get this person to tell me who is us, I got like 5 other messages from 5 other places saying, join us. And I started interrogating these messages the same way. Eventually I was told, the opposition is planning a protest outside of GICO. But they're doing it quietly. They're doing it quietly. How do you organize a protest quietly?
Huh? How do you organize the protest quietly? A protest to deal with a national issue like this, election fraud, should be everybody's business. And so there should be a nationwide announcement that a protest of this nature will take place in front of GECO. Agreed or disagree? Right? Agree or disagree? But what bothered me is when I searched my mind and I asked myself, why should this protest be organized or shush? I come to two conclusions. One, it is either to achieve the element of surprise, or two, there is uncertainty as to what the response to the call will be. And my inquisitive mind is telling me that the only reason for organizing this protest or shush is because there's uncertainty as to what the response will be. Now, your leaders can only be uncertain as to what the response will be based on your past conduct, based on the reading of your current conduct. And if your leaders are reading you to say that we are uncertain how these people will react, it means that you have not emboldened your leaders enough to do the bold things which you are asking them to do. And so I'm saying, if you really want your leaders to act and act condignly and be bold, then you might as well start acting condignly and being bold. You might as well start putting your numbers behind your leaders, alongside your leaders, and in front of your leaders. Otherwise, you're just going to have them cowering in fear, questioning their ability to get you to do what is necessary to change the status quo. Paul Kush, I deliberately didn't touch the element of surprise, because this is why I know it couldn't be the element of surprise. And anybody who believes that it could be the element of surprise really and truly has no understanding, or has not taken the time to understand what we're dealing with in this country. When you have people putting on a red t-shirt to eat a bread among your support base or even within your political organization, when you have once senior members of your political organization putting on a red t-shirt to eat a bread, what surprise you could surprise your opponents? Organizing our church perhaps on WhatsApp. Just as how I got 5 forwards of that message, I bet you the PPP got 500 forwards and the police got another 5,000. So who are you surprising? There's no element there can be no element of surprise in that. There can be no element of surprise. I take a bet. I've been out of this place in the morning, or not even last evening, but I'm almost sure that GCOM is already heavily barricaded, if not since last night, from early this morning. I am almost sure of it. Anybody passing the main street area there, High Street area, you give me a link and let me know what's happening outside the GCOM. Right? So there could be no element of surprise here. Right? Some people will unwittingly leak out the secret because they are trying to help to mobilize too. And so I'm saying a protest organized like to deal with this issue of electoral fraud and the frauded list for nomination and signatures and so on should have been announced on every radio and television station in this country that you have access to. Social media is a good tool. But can we also use the traditional media for public announcements? As a paid advertisement, for example, it's St. John's may not take it. It's a PPP outfit. Channel 28 may not take it too. It's a PPP outfit. But you have so many other radio stations that might very well take it because it's business. So are we going to continue to act timidly? Are we going to continue to just send a few WhatsApp messages out there and say, well, we're organizing a protest, but we don't want to announce it yet? What are we doing? What are we doing? We're showing fear. We're showing weakness. And so I'm saying to our supporters, I'm saying to our people that we got to address this nonsense. Because it's nonsense. I know, like I say, I will mash some toes. And people will feel like I am the enemy, but I'm not the enemy. This is love. It is just tough love. I see somebody who I respect a whole lot and I consider a friend say, but Mr. Amsterdam is not true, is that quietly. So it's more. It's more. Walk around Buxton, for example, and ask how many people in Buxton are aware that there's going to be a protest against this fraudulent practice in the nomination process for local government election. I'll take your bet. Not 1% of Buxtonians know. Perhaps if you do the same thing in Golden Grove, the Backlist, Ansgrove, Victoria, Mocha, you will get the very result. And I'm not knocking the activists in these areas, because the activists in these areas have to take guidance, or if you want to call it instructions, from their senior managers. As so they might be just executing as they are advised. Right? We gotta do better. Yeah, nah, that's a fact. Some people wait till they're old. It's called desperation. I said it before, and maybe I didn't say it in the exact words, but I said when you look at the behavior of a lot of people who do certain things at the age that they're at, it suggests that they have not achieved anything in their youth. I said they're at that age where they're desperate to achieve, or they're desperate out of desperation to have a comfortable old age, they make certain decisions. Right? So yeah, some people wait till they're old for eat the food. But I am saying that while we expect our leaders to act in bold ways, we, as their supporters, we who see them as our representatives, have to embolden them by our own actions. Right? When he said drive through the country with Bolan and announce the thing, I agree. Right? Miranda Brown is raising another issue. How do you surprise the city when it has smart cameras? How can you surprise anybody when it is alleged that even the PS husband got access to smart cameras? Eh? Oh yeah, I'm surprising anybody. But I'm just being me, and I'm just saying we need to be bold. Right? We need to be bold. And if we're going to get bold leadership, we have to embolden our leaders. Right? Good. So keep that in mind. But let me make it pellucid. Let me make it clearer that there is a protest outside of GCOM at 11:30 today. 11:30 today, the opposition is going to be outside of GCOM, protesting for a clean voters list, protesting against all the fraudulent practices in nomination for the 2023 local government elections. And I'm going to say this. Your leaders will only be taken seriously if you turn out in your numbers. Right? Because if you 31 or 32 or 28 parliamentarians turn out there, it can only be 31 or 32 or 28 parliamentarians out there. And the PPP will shout, look at them, they're representing nobody. Why should we even listen to them? Right? But are you telling me, for example, each of those parliamentarians can find 10 people supporting them? Because if you got, let's say, 28 parliamentarians, I'm being honest, I can't remember the number right now, but there are 65 parliament seats with PPP having 33 perhaps, so we must have got about 32 in parliament, 31, 32 in parliament. The suspensions have been listed. Don't worry with the suspensions. The fact is they're parliamentarians still. If you got 30 parliamentarians and each of them can galvanize 10 persons to accompany them, you're talking about 330 persons out there. You hear what I'm saying? So, Clifton, are you saying that I'm the leader? Because I'm telling the others they're doing a scandal bunt? All right. We are very light discourse. Don't think it's light, though. It's very serious. So, if you were to get all of your parliamentarians out there, and you and see 300 or close to 330 persons out there, it means every parliamentarian was not able to bring 10 persons to the protest. So are you really emboldening your representative? Huh? Are you emboldening your representative? If as a representative I can't find 10 persons who are prepared to stand out there with me, something wrong, man. Huh? Something wrong? Because I pray. I'm going to be out there. I'm telling you up front, I'm announcing. I don't generally announce certain things when I'm doing them. But once I'm going to protest, I announce that. I always tell you I'm going to protest. And so today I plan to go out there in front of GCOM. I understand all the parliamentarians are going to be out there from the opposition side. I hope all is inclusive, all. I hope to see Cameron Ramjatan. I hope to see Cathy Hughes. I hope to see all the parliamentarians, whether or not you're wearing an AP and U, whether or not you're wearing an AFC cap or an AP and U cap in parliament. I'm going to be looking for them. I'm going to use my cameras and point them out. So if you see a point out, some of them know they're absent. Right? But let us embolden. Let us embolden our leaders. Let us embolden our representatives by our numbers. Right? Dennis McKenzie says 31 of them. So it's 310 plus 31, right? If each of them were to bring 10 persons, we're talking about 340, 341 persons. Can we make that number today? We will see. Now, Naomi Joko is saying the parliamentarians don't want to protest. Well, I'm told today that they will all be out there. Prove them wrong. You turn up and let them be absent. Right? You know what I'm saying? You turn up and let them be absent. Okay? You turn up and prove them wrong. Then the champion is telling me that Normie had said one parliamentarian told him he's not an activist, he's an MP. Well, in other serious democracies, the parliamentarian would have been dismissed. He had to go about his business, he or she. Right? Because how did you become a parliamentarian? Huh? Not through activism? If you're not a parliamentarian through activism, then you're poor the ticket. You're a beneficiary of some friends and cronyism. Good? Anyhow, let's talk about other things. Is there something I saw that I needed to deal with? Anyhow, that's my position this morning on protest. We can't organize protest hush hush. Right? Oh, I wanted to say, you know, one of the things I know about our parliamentarians or MPs when they come out sometimes, they come out just to spend enough time in front of the camera to say that I've been here. And then they do the disappearing act. Y'all know that, right? But we are going to have a difference in behavior. But we have to embolden them. That's what I'm saying. We have to embolden them. Good. Joe wants to know if that number turns out today. How many more days we will see that number? Well, I'm going to say this. If that number turns out today, the opposition should come out every day and protest. Because that would show that they've built a momentum and they have to maintain that momentum in front of GCOM. Right? That's all I'm saying. But we're going on. I said yesterday I was going to talk to you about the acquisition or the proposed, the highest bidder for Pegasus, for Marriott. Why do I keep saying Pegasus? The owner of Pegasus, Robert Badal, is the second highest bid. I think he bidded $56.5 million for the Marriott. Whereas Bartrey, or whatever his name, I'll get his correct name for you just now. Good friend of Cyril Lynch and the PPP government. His bid was at 65 million US. Why do I want to deal with that? There's a commercial financial transaction, you know? Right? So why I want to get into that? I want to address that because number one, Marriott is the property of the people of Guyana. Tax money, bail it, tax money, bail it out the debt. It is now profitable. It is up on the market for sale. Why are we selling profitable assets? I'm saying to you again, we have a history of selling profitable assets under the PPP. What used to be the Co-op Bank? That bank right down at by Starbuck area. The bank that is now on Main Street, Republic Bank Guyana. Republic Bank Guyana, in its previous form, I think was the Co-op Bank. I maintain was Guyana's most successful bank, commercial bank that is, or agricultural bank, whichever one it was classified as. Because when you look at what the bank owned when it was sold to Republic Bank Trinidad, the bank was not in financial problems. The bank didn't have an asset deficiency. Right? The bank did not have a financial deficiency, but it was still sold. Who was it sold to? Republic Bank Trinidad. Who owns Republic Bank Trinidad? Who are the owners? Or should I say the principals? At that time, who were the people? Who was in government at that time? What was the relationship between the Trinidadian government, the Trinidadian private sector, and the PPP at that time? Has anybody ever asked themselves, wait, was this a payback for political favors coming out of Trinidad? Because my belief back then is that Basil Pandey might have been the Prime Minister of Trinidad. I can't remember for a fact, but I'm just thinking about a number of years. But I'm saying that there has always been a relationship between the quote-unquote Indo-led or Indo-dominated political party in Trinidad and the PPP. Okay? That's what I'm saying, and I've always maintained it. And I've established for you, or I hope I've established for you, that that relationship is between Guyana, Trinidad, and Suriname. Santoki now, and the PPP government, and Kamla Bessasar, I think her name was, or is, in Trinidad. That's a relationship. And it's the same kind of relationship which existed when the PPP had just gotten into power. And so they were getting political support out of Trinidad, no doubt. And perhaps financial support too. So the question that's crossing my mind now, when that bank was sold, was it political payback? Huh? Was it political payback? Because the bank was profitable. I'm telling you the bank was profitable. I know the bank was profitable. I always remember, for example, WPA had a member who was a board member on that board. As a matter of fact, there's something else that's clicking in my mind. Right? I know that that member resigned from the board in protest. Because as far as I remember, the board of governors of the bank wasn't even consulted when it was going to be sold. I am sure there are older folks than I am. Who might be on this chat that can remember the transactions and the history behind it? Was Jack Dio the finance minister when the bank was sold to Trinidad? Was he junior finance minister? Was he senior? What was Jack Dio in the government at that time? Because somewhere at the back of my mind, I'm thinking that he was the man who did this deal. So if that's accurate, then history would have taught us that, listen, anything that's profitable in this mine, Jack, the others divest his friends and cronies. Right? You know what I'm saying? Trying to get some information. Yeah, so we're talking. If that memory of mine is accurate, then I'm saying that we have a history of Jagdio, or let me make it broader, the PPP, selling out profitable assets to their friends and cronies. GPC was sold. GPC wasn't the only drug manufacturing company in Guyana, but it was the largest, perhaps better equipped I can't address the profitability, but most valuable when it was sold to Warrior Group. Right? Who is Bobby? A friend of Bar Jagdi on the PPP. So if you look, there's a history of the state's profitable enterprises being placed into private hands. Right? The state's profitable enterprises have always been transferred into private hands under the PPP. So there's no surprise that there's a move now that the market has been brought to profitability to transfer it. My information is that government in general doesn't like to own these things and would rather, I'm talking about hotel in this instance, and would rather they find themselves into the hands of private sector people. But when one looks at the manner in which these divestments happen, you have no option but to question the motive behind the divestment. Because to start with, it is never done in a transparent manner. The 10% GT&T shares were divested. Divested to whom? Up until now, this nation doesn't know. Up until now, the nation doesn't know. NIS money was staying uninvested in the Barbies Bridge. Can anyone say with certainty who the investors, the private investors in the Barbies Bridge are? Can anyone say that? Who the real beneficial owners of this investment are? And there's so many other instances of this cloak and dagger kind of behavior. Right? This cloak and dagger kind of behavior. Somebody's mentioning the Princess Hotel here. Bodies, a good friend, again, a good friend and crony of the PPP, started the construction of that hotel. Or in fact, constructed that hotel under the name Bodies International Hotel. An unknown brand, Bodies International Hotel. But while it was being constructed as Bodies International Hotel, and you can go and check the media, a large portion of that investment came from, I think it perhaps was the same NIS, because the PPP government, led at that time, I think by Bar Jagdio, loaned money to Bodies to complete the construction of that hotel. At the same time, your black brothers and sisters were working on the construction of the Kasik Banquet Hall, right behind where Bodies is. I hope I remember that name clearly. And they were struggling. And they had approached the government for assistance. And the government had given them hell. And in the last minute, when it became public knowledge that the government was assisting Bodies with hundreds of millions of Guyana dollars, they threw little crumbs at the owners of Kasik. By that time, the Kasik project was perhaps far overdue and so on, and I understand the owners eventually ran into financial difficulties and maybe they had to sell it. Y'all remember that? I don't have these things written down, but they're embedded. Children is saying Kasik never got off their foot. It's a fact. Well, they did because they went a far way, but they never completed. But no longer, no sooner was bodies completed using state funds, it was sold to the Princess brand. It was sold to the Princess brand. Somebody's asking, was the state's investment ever repaid? I don't know. The auditors might have to tell us that. Right? So I'm pointing out all of these things to say to you, the PPP got a record. The PPP got a record of divesting everything profitable in this country from the state. Y'all remember, there's another thing which I want to point out to you that was divested. Y'all remember Letco? Letco, Livestock Industry Development Company. Letco, y'all remember the pasteurization plant in Kingston, right behind G-Com area there? That was divested. Thank you. That was divested under the PPP. That is where our dairy farmers could have taken their milk and it was pasteurized and sent to schools as part of the schools feeding program. Y'all remember that? I mean, I'm big, but I ain't old. But I remember these things. Yes, milk factory, y'all call it. Who got the money? Who got the pasteurization plant? A friend and Coney of the PPP. What they're doing with it there? They're selling water. It's not a big water purification plant. I want to believe the system of purification is almost similar, and so when they acquired it, they acquired ready-made infrastructure to get into business right away. And you ask yourself why the government is not doing anything about fixing your water distribution system and the quality of water you get from the GWI, because their friends and cronies are into the business of purification of water for sale. Y'all remember, I'm just taking you down the road of history so you can understand the divestment of the Marriott while it is profitable. And it has just been confirmed that yes, when the bank was sold, Jack Dio was finance minister and the year was 1997. Y'all hear what I'm saying? Thank you to one of our usual resourceful persons. You see, when y'all see me alone in front of the camera, we got people doing little support and research work for us, you know. We can always call on the generals. Thank you for that information. Jack Dio. So Jack Dio and the PPP, or even Jack Dio's leader of the PPP, has a record of divesting your profitable enterprises in this country. What y'all going to do about that? So the question I want to ask is, do you believe Jack Dio has been spearheading all of these divestment deals or transferring all of these public properties to private ownership simply because he's a patriot? Or do you believe that, like Vice News suggests, that he is in the business of kickback and drawback and under the table deals and so on? Huh? Y'all answer that for me. Morning, neighbor, morning. Them not like me conniving morning. Good morning, good morning. Welcome to another program of Guyanese Morning Time. And you're tuned to Kams Tv on Facebook Live. It is now 7 hours 12 on the 26th day of April in the year 2023. I am your host, Kidaki Amsterdam, the BUXTONIAN. Good morning and welcome to the program.
I invoke the WPA's position that we are engaging in civil disobedience and non-cooperation with the government. And on that grounds, I refuse to participate in the interview. The question and struggle, is not personal. Whatever sacrifice as a political activist or a political leader you have to make for your people, you have to make it.
Guyana and Guyanese, at home and abroad. Tune in to Guyanese Morning Time, hosted by Kams Amsterdam, where the sun always shines. Guyanese Morning Time, the people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again. We rise up early morning watching Kams TV, where wisdom and knowledge, where the wicked politician they try to trick me. Guyana is a land for everybody. With 6 races should live in harmony. Is one set of people getting aisle money. Is one set of people doing the thievery. Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again. This is a program that you all can see, sharing your views and your integrity. Like it, comment and share it all around. Pass it to your neighbor, safe and sound. A sad situation going on in this town. The voice of the people is getting trampled down. Out of the mouths of babes and sucklings, which has ordained me to sing.
Guyanese Morning Time. Again, Guyanese morning and welcome to the program. It is 7 hours 15 on the 26th day of April in the year 2023. You're tuned to the Guyanese Morning Time. It's Wednesday, and so Dr. HINDS is in the house with us today as usual. And we're going to get straight to the business of talking about what's happening in this dear country of ours. Dr. HINDS, good morning. Welcome to the program. How are you doing?
Thank you. Good morning.
So it's a new week. Go ahead, sir.
No, I'm saying I'm surviving.
Survival of the fittest. That's the mode we're in, no?
Yes, sir.
It's a new week. A lot of developments since the last time you were here. I don't know exactly where to start. There's so many things to start with, but I think, as they like to say, let's start with the low-hanging fruits, if I can call them that. We learned recently that the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Home Affairs, what one would argue is the equivalent of Homeland Security perhaps in the United States of America, was arrested by the Border Patrol, if that's the correct name again, while traveling to China via the USA. Word on the street is that she was detained for about 3 hours and cuffed, harassed, and at the end of it all, her mobile phone was taken by the authorities. What many people perhaps did not know, and we have learned, is that the phone which was taken from her is actually state property, in that it is the Huawei phone, one of the devices used to manage the smart city cameras. And so this is the permanent secretary, senior representative of a friendly government being treated like that by American immigration. What do you make of this happening?
Not much, because I don't know much. I've been following the reports in the media, especially the Stabrook News, which broke the story. And there are a couple of things that we know, which you mentioned just now. She's the permanent secretary. She was traveling to China. We're not certain yet whether, well, that's not true. In today's papers, I think Stabrook News is reporting that she was on government business. So so we know that she was in government business. She was in transit through the United States of America.
In transit to China.
They arrested her. They arrested her, took away her phone. She came back to Guyana via another port. Up to now, the government has not said much, except they said in today's papers is reporting that she was lawfully arrested. So the government of Guyana is not blaming the U.S. government with any wrongdoing. If she was lawfully arrested, it meant that they followed all the protocols. The government, according to today's newspaper, is saying that it would have to have a debriefing from the young lady, and then it will make decisions. So that's all we know. There's not much to go on, except one can speculate. You know, I am not into the business of speculating.
We are understanding that this incident actually perhaps about 2 weeks prior to the public being aware of it. And so
yes,
why is it now
April the 8th. She was, according to the reports in the Stabrook News, it happened on April the 8th. Stabrook News broke the story, I think, on the 19th.
So the government is, in your mind, withholding information, because by then one would assume that it would have had a debriefing. Let me go a little further. I like to say in any self-respecting nation, that happening to one of its operatives, one of its representatives, is it natural that that person should have been called home immediately to provide a debriefing on the situation?
Well, it depends on whether the person was doing something that the government doesn't know about. If the person traveled with the knowledge of the government wouldn't necessarily call her home. And in fact, she doesn't have to come home to be debriefed. She can be debriefed in China with all the technology that we have.
Very well. So the other thing, in the early hours of the reportage by Stabrook News, we were hearing conflicting reports. First, the government said, or it is alleged that the government said she was on unofficial business. And then we later learned that she was actually on what I might consider business. She was going to some political conference. The permanent secretary, is it natural that the permanent secretary would be going on a political conference?
Well, it depends on what the political conference is about. If it has something that has to do with her job, then that is official duty. If she was going to a political conference that did not have anything to do with her job, then she was there as a partisan. We don't know.
Very well. All right, so we're still to see where that matter is going to lead. But many are speculating. There's like we see a whole lot of speculation. A whole lot of speculation. As a matter of fact, Stabrook News, I think, reported also that this young lady was on the watch list of the U.S. I don't think they have declared watch list for what purpose. Are you aware of why she was on the watch list?
No, I have absolutely no information. I've been following the story in the Stabroek News.
Okay, very well. Let's talk now, Dr. Hinds, about what's the time? It is 7:22 hours. Let's talk about APARTHEID, the subvention from government, the declaration by Anil Nandlal, I think last week, that while they are in court with APARTHEID over the last year's subvention, it is their belief, I'm saying it is their belief, that the subvention for 2023 is not in contention and is not before the court. And Anil Nandlal declared that the government therefore will take that subvention and give it to individual member organizations, founding members, as I think he declared, of APARTHEID. What we might have considered a threat then is now being actioned. I have seen a letter written to the individual membership of APARTHEID, African Cultural Organizations. Basically, the letter was dated the 17th, and it requested of these organizations to submit proposals by the 20th. In keeping with the declared goals of the International Decade for People of African Descent, submit proposals by the 20th. The letter also indicated that the individual members of the organization will receive equal sums from the disbursement, from the quote-unquote subvention. I also saw a letter, well, that was a letter to the editor from APARTHEID saying APARTHEID is not going to stand in the way of its individual members receiving cash grants from the government. But as far as they are aware, the subvention of the government, subvention of APARTHEID is not what is going to be used to make that payment, if I am paraphrasing correctly. I'm sure you've been following these issues. What are your thoughts on all that is unfolding so far?
I am of the same reading of APARTHEID. The decade ends next year. And so when President Granger initiated the arrangement, he would have done so for the decade. And so all subventions up until the end of the decade, according to the arrangements made by the Granger government, are due to APARTHEID. And so therefore, Mr. Nandlal, I think, gets it wrong. Whether he's doing so knowingly or unknowingly is a matter for him to say. So I agree with APARTHEID. If they give monies to the groups, those monies will be considered cash grants to the groups and not the subvention. The subvention has to go to APARTHEID. That is the understanding, and it covers the decade.
So while we know that this is an approach of the government to divide and rule, to destroy the umbrella organization under which African cultural groups are operating for the good of the country, we rather suspect, I dare say, that there are some individual groups that will most likely take this money. It was one of your recommendations when we first discussed this, that perhaps they should take the money but hand it over to APARTHEID, so that APARTHEID can continue its line of march. Given the position that APARTHEID has taken, that, listen, this is a cash grant to these groups, we really will not stand in the way of them taking the cash grants because we expect our subvention. What are your thoughts going forward?
My thoughts on what?
The position that they should hand over the money, take the money and hand it over to APARTHEID.
If they want to do so, they should do so. Nothing stops a group from giving the money as a donation to APARTHEID. see, there are two things here. One has to go behind what the government is doing. The government wants to bypass, and it has done so, bypass the representatives of African Guyanese, whether those representatives be elected representatives or civil society representatives. So that's one. And secondly, it is engaged in a subtle form of racism. Because what it is doing, it is tempting a community to act like beggars. It goes under the guise of giving money to the communities for quote-unquote development. But the monies that they're giving to the community are not monies that could be used for any form of development. So they're grants, they're cash grants. And so what they're doing is that they're playing on the neediness of people. And that's why I'm calling it a subtle, or perhaps more than subtle form of racism. Because you are turning a whole community into beggars, and you're doing so under the guise of giving them money for development. Now, if you want to develop a community, you first of all have to come up with policies, and then those policies have to be financed through the official channels. If the policy includes giving cash grants, then you have to say what the cash grants are for. We in the WPA, for example, we are the first party that talked about cash transfers, as we call them. And we weren't talking about going around and giving people money just like that. We said, well, first of all, you have to have a feasibility study. And then we recommend that 10% of the oil revenues be divided equally among all the households. And it's estimated there are about 220 households. And those include households of all ethnic groups. And we are also saying that it could be a conditional cash grant. That is, that the cash grant can be linked to school attendance of children. It can be linked to their attendance at clinics, so that you're not sharing out money just like that. You're giving the cash grant as a supplement to people's income, and you are tying them to conditions. You know, if you say there should be a 90% school attendance of children in the household, if they fail to meet that, then they don't qualify for the grant the next year. So we are talking about a policy, not going around and giving cash grants, and then you're giving it unequally because you're not giving it to households. So, the government is doing something that's dangerous and nasty. Because one is not even sure that these things are cash grants. These things are bribes. You're going around and you're giving individuals, or now they say they're going to give organizations money, which you're loosely saying that they should use it to pursue APARTHEID goals. APARTHEID goals are comprehensive. $100 million, they're using it in a macro way. If you divide 100 million by 55 groups and you give them, they will all end up with about $200,000, something like that. What can they do with $2,000, these groups? So the PPP is not interested in no development or APARTHEID rule objectives, and it is interested in treating African Guyanese as beggars or turning them into beggars. And for me, that is unacceptable, because it is a form of racism, because it makes assumptions about a particular group of people. That, you know, these people are needy. These people are going to choose money over principle. You know, I heard a PNC parliamentarian last night said he would tell the people that if the people give you a $10,000 for jersey, take the money and then take off the jersey and throw it away. And the interviewer asked him if he would do it, and he said no, he wouldn't do it. And at some point in the interview, he said the people targeted are mostly African Guyanese. And I sat there and I shook my head, because that MP doesn't realize that you're actually telling people to trade their dignity for $10,000. You see, every time you take a $10,000 bribe as an African, what you're doing is that you are taking $10,000 and offering yourself up to be put in chains. And that MP, and I don't blame the MP, it is not his business to think through these things and to think through the cultural effect, the ethnic effect this is having on a community in the long term. That is why we must stop it. Because you're asking people to take $10,000 in exchange for a chain around their feet and their minds. Now, if a government comes with a policy that is aimed at developing the community, and that policy entails giving some amount of cash to people, fine, I have no problem with that. Absolutely no problem with that. If the government devises a cash transfer program, then fine. But if you're going in and giving people $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, you're really asking people to sell their dignity, to make a choice between their dignity and $20,000, $30,000. I grew up in a community that was poor as it is today. They probably was more poorer back then. And I grew up hearing people in the village say, "Me not like beg. As poor as me is, me not like beg." And what those words meant was that I got pride and dignity. And I grew up with that pride and dignity. And I think what the PPP is doing is that as a matter of political approach in pursuit of dominance is to assault the dignity of African Guyanese. And they don't have to say, "I am going there to assault the dignity." You don't have to do that. You don't have to say that, but you're doing that. And I think black leadership has to put down its feet and stop it, stop the community. It's your territory. I don't care what people say. The PNC cannot go into Indian communities and behave in a certain way. They can't. The religious leaders are not going to allow them. The PPP is not going to allow them. And so they can't go in those communities and do that. Even when they were in office, the PNC couldn't go into the Indian areas and behave in a certain way. And so the PNC and the other representatives of black people should not allow the PPP to go into the communities and do certain things and mess with the dignity of their supporters. Because if you allow that to happen, after a time it becomes a culture. It becomes normative. That people would accept handouts instead of enlightened policies. So I think we are at a critical juncture that we have to flex our muscles. The PPP has to be stopped, and the place that you start is with your own people. I've said over the last couple of weeks that people who knowingly accept bribes, must be disciplined. And you begin by ostracizing them. The Indian community makes no secret about how it feels about people who don't accept bribes, but they go over to another party or something. Yeah, the names they call them. Nobody wants to be called Nimakaran in the Indian community, or a traitor, or a crab dog, or the names that they are called. It works. Because Indians are not serving themselves up to be bribed by black people. And we ought not to be ashamed and afraid to manners of people who engage in that slave-like business of allowing themselves to be bribed knowingly. They must pay a price. I heard the same MP last night when asked about I think a former MP who was hugging up Jack Dio and crossed over to the PPP, and that MP said, oh, she will come home back and we will accept her. Well, the PNC can accept back those who embarrass them if they want to. Because this MP said we will accept her, and that's part of the problem. Parties play games, and people play games with them. But here we have to make a separation between the party and the race. If the party wants to accept her, that's their business. But as a community, we have to overrule the party. This is the business. If people feel they can go and drink some soup and see how it tastes, and if they get shame and embarrassed, they come back in and they're taken back in, the party can do that. But I think the community ought not to be in that business. We are at a critical juncture in our country's history. The PPP has started to realign the politics and society of our country. And by the time that realignment is finished, if it's not stopped now, by the time it's finished, we are going to be sorry. Because the more entrenched a dictatorship becomes, the more difficult it is to uproot that dictatorship. It took us 23 years. "23 years to uproot the last PPP government. 23 years. And they didn't have the kind of money and resources and resolve that they have now. People are playing around. They're playing around with a government and party that are not playing around.
Thank you. You talk about us ostracizing them in the community. I'm going to bring a direct, what should I say, exhibit to you on this issue of taking the PPP's money. You said this MP, for example, say they will take people, encourage people to take the money and then do what they have to do. As I would say, to benefit the opposition. I have been arguing, and I continue to argue, that the PPP might very well expect them to take the money, and then come election they vote differently. But what the PPP is buying is influence. Because when they go into the communities in particular, and they look at perhaps people who youngsters especially look up to as leaders, role models and things, and they get them to wear a PPP t-shirt at whatever cost. They say a picture tells 1,000 words. Here is a picture of two leading members of the Buxtonian community. I consider them leading. Robin Phillips has been in the Buxton community as a coach, teacher, etc. For quite a while. And then there's this young man they call Tari. I know him as Kofi McDonald, who again has been working among young people. He is a promoter, a keeper, if I can say that, of the maypole tradition, pole plaiting tradition. These are two people who have access to young people. And they're seen wearing the PPP's jersey. Some people say because according to them they got to eat the food at 10,000 or 20,000. Expound on the impact of this kind of imagery in our communities, and why it is so necessary, like you say, to perhaps isolate people like this.
No, First of all, I don't want, you mentioned two people's names, and I don't want to get in to individuals, because I don't want to be interpreted that I am telling people to go and harass named individuals. So my comments are now is not directed at those two individuals you call who I know. And I want to be very careful that I am not directing my comments to those two individuals. I agree with you that what the PPP is doing is buying influence, but it's more than influence. Because one is not too sure whether now that those two people or other people, now that those who have gone over and put on their jerseys, one is not sure that they will transfer their influence to the PPP. I've seen people cross the floor over the years, and they usually take themselves. Whatever influence that they may have had, they don't take it where they're going politically. So, it is more than influence. It is meant to divide the community in us and them. That's the first thing. I mean, if you divide the community, you destabilize the community. And second, it is meant to dampen the spirits of opposition supporters. You know, you see 10 of these people, 20, and in your head is 2,000. And so it goes beyond influence to divide and conquer. And also the optics and its impact it would have on the confidence of opposition supporters, in particular African Guyanese.
Oh, I guess you're done there. All right.
Yeah.
As I continue to talk about buying influence, and we have always warned of the dangers of the access of the kind of money, or dangers of the way the kinds of money the PPP has access to will be used to buy influence, to buy this, buy that, to pay off people and so on. Nomination day was last Monday. We saw all of the death coming out from the cemeteries and registering as candidates and nominators. We saw overseas-based citizens who have not been in this country for quite a while appearing in Guyana to sign nomination forms. We saw people who have never had a Guyana ID card signing as nominators, and their Guyana ID card number attached and so on. The same kind of corrupt practices which we identified in the recount station in 2020. Many will argue that here is further evidence to support the claims of the coalition and those of us who were in the recount stations during the 5-month standoff with the 2020 elections. The evidence is right here. We saw Bart Jagdeo admitting basically that, look, we did take part in skullduggery. We are apologizing to this particular family whose dead mother was on the list. We learned recently that the PPP has now taken the approach of going into communities and offering the people whose signatures were forged financial compensation to let bygones be bygones, let their names remain on the list, leave the forgery in place, and so that they can go ahead. What are the dangers? The dangers, first and foremost, of the police doing nothing about this situation, GCOM doing nothing about this situation. And if people were to take this $20,000 inducement, what are the dangers?
If the police and GCOM are doing nothing about it, the people in the communities have to do something about it. And the political party of the opposition that is contesting has to do something about it. I read the Demoral Raves report where Norton is threatening to take action. And I think that is quite encouraging, because the PNC obviously went into the election to defend its territory. But if it is seeing this level of malpractice at the opening bell, and it is seeing GCOM's standoff position and the police standoff position, then that's a clear indication that both GCOM and the police will allow rigging to take place at a higher scale. So that when the PPP said that it is confident it will win Georgetown and it will win this and win that, it is now becoming clear that part of the plan is to rig. The challenge now is that, having seen this early rigging and knowing that you have a voters list which is a prize to riggers, if I were the PNC, in the face of the police not acting, the police acted under the APNU, AFC, when reports were made to them about people not being in the country and they voted, the police acted. They provided the information. And if you remember, Nandalan asked GCOM to provide him with that information. He got information months ago. And people thought at that time they were going to move to discipline people in the police force who gave that information. They haven't done so. So it is not that like the police never acted on these matters. It acted. And the question, how did it act under the APNU AFC and it's not acting now? And so the PPP, the PNC, has every right to signal that if those two bodies do not take action, the PNC may have to take drastic actions. We can't have an election in which we are seeing the rigging from day one. Massive rigging already. And the authorities are not taking action, and go and put your neck on a guillotine. And I think that's the point Mr. Norton was making. That it is clear that these people intend to rig the hell out of those elections. And it poses a serious question as to whether the opposition, in the face of this situation, should go ahead with elections. I think it poses the question. poses a serious question.
And as a matter of fact, that question which it poses is in my mind a question that the WP has answered or attempted to answer even before these fraudulent practices were uncovered on nomination day. The WPA's position was that these elections are likely to be severely rigged given the stance at GCOM, and the elections really and truly, the election day should be used as a day of resistance, especially by African Guyanese. Has there been a change on that position? I mentioned just the other day, I think it was GHK Lal who I heard on your program saying he is believing more and more that the WPA's position is the right one.
Dr. Henry Jeffrey also said last night on my program that the PMC is right to go into the elections to defend its territory. The WPA is right to point out the ills that we face in this election. So, look, it's not easy when you're dealing with a dictatorship. It's not easy. And you have to watch this situation day by day.
A dictatorship indeed, and perhaps a police state. A dictatorship is usually accompanied by excessive powers of the police and the coercive arms of the state, I dare argue. When the PPP came to office in 2020, or shortly thereafter, we learned from the first or second budget that they had created what they call a regional security apparatus, which was, I think, functioning perhaps outside or inside of the compound of the Guyana Defense Force, or there was some close attachment there. A lot of noise was made about it at that time, but then, like everything else, it went quiet. Nobody perhaps followed up and was monitoring what is happening from that end. But following the Ogunse statement about the Army and Police being predominantly African Guyanese, or his reported speech, let me say that, and calling on the police and soldiers and so on to turn their guns in the right direction. Shortly after, just yesterday, as a matter of fact, I think, a bill was laid in the National Assembly for what I call another spy agency, some kind of intelligence agency being established by the government to monitor. One of the frightening things in that bill is the fact that the officers of this spy agency are going to have equivalent and greater powers than the Guyana Police and the Guyana Defense Force. Is this the PPP's response to Ogunse's admonition, if I can call it that? Is it the PPP's response to its continued efforts to control the coercive arms of the state, which the Constitution really and truly does not allow?
Well, it may well be a response to Ogunse. I will leave that to the analysts. But listen, the PPP doesn't want to control the armed forces. The PPP wants to control the leadership of the police and the army. The PPP knows fully well that it does not have the loyalty of the rank and file in the police and the army. Those people repeatedly vote over 90% for the opposition, whether it's the PMC or the APNU. So the PPP is not stupid. They're not going to be able to tell the rank and file, go shoot black people. They're well aware of that. So their strategy is to control the leadership of those two agencies and simultaneously create parallel agencies that are loyal to the PPP itself. The regional thing is a mystery, as you pointed out. This one, it is clear that the director of this agency will be appointed by the president and will be answerable only to the president. So this is a government agency as opposed to state agency. The police and the army are state apparatus that are created by the Constitution. They are creatures of the Constitution. The regional security and this security do not have constitutional cover. They are created by statutes. And the question then is whether these statutes that create these two agencies violate the Constitution. If you have two constitutional bodies, the army and the police, and then you're creating two other bodies with the same power, the head of this security force is going to have the same power as the commissioner and the chief of staff, the chairman of the chief of staff of the army. Is it constitutional in creating competing agencies that are in fact government agencies as opposed to state agencies? So the strategy of controlling the leadership of the constitutional bodies and simultaneously creating other bodies with similar power. The spy, this new top spy, will be able to spy on the army and the police. So, I repeat, the PPP is not stupid. They know they don't have the loyalty of the army and the police rank and file. They know that. We now know why they got so jittery once the WPA began to speak directly to the members of the armed forces. And we were speaking to them as citizens. Because a soldier, a police is first and foremost a citizen. And they don't lose their ethnicity when they go in the army or when they go in the police force. They're expected to act professionally in spite of their ethnicity, to act in a neutral way. And our conversation with the army and the police was in the context of not acting professionally. If the army and the police act professionally and don't shoot down black people, we would not have to have a conversation with them. The conversation we're having is within the context of the political and unprofessional use of the police. It is within that context the WPA is having this conversation with the armed forces. that so long as the armed forces act professionally and non-political and neutral, there's no need for a conversation. We have seen evidence of the leadership of the armed forces directing the police and the army to shoot at black people. And it is within that context that we feel as a civic duty, we ought to say to the army and police, you're acting unprofessionally, but you're also acting unprofessionally against one ethnic group, because you're not shooting Amerindians and East Indians and Portuguese and Chinese. You're shooting one ethnic group. And if you're shooting at one ethnic group, then you are being part of an ethnic design by the government. And it is within that context that we are speaking to those brothers and sisters in uniform. Back into the barracks, we are telling them, when Ogunse said, turn your guns away. Turn your guns back to the barracks. People think we are saying turn the guns to the government. Some people say we are saying turn the guns to Indians. They can't make up their mind because both of them are lying. Some of them are saying, well, you know, my brother Kit said, well, it says turn your guns to the government. Ogunse never say that. And then my brother Rafi Dev is saying, Ogunse said, turn the guns on Indians. Both of them are making interpretation. Turn the guns to the barracks. That's where you belong. None of them is making that interpretation. Turn your guns to the barracks. You ought not to be turning your gun on Indians, Chinese, Portuguese, Amerindians. You ought, or black people. You ought not to be turning your guns against any ethnic group. But you're turning it against one ethnic group. And we in the WP are saying, turn it away from that ethnic group. And turn it into the barracks, where it belongs. So, this security thing is a grave development. I think it's unconstitutional, and it should be challenged in the courts. It's a bold step in the realignment that I'm talking about. The end product of the realignment, the grand plan, is domination, political domination by the PPP, and by extension, ethnic domination by the community that it represents. Yes, working class people are not the governors, working class Indians, but working class Indians are trapped by the logic of our politics. Those who oppose are fearful to come out in full opposition. Those who oppose the PPP and don't like what it is doing. And others, for purposes of solidarity. This is their party. It has been their party since 1957, 55. And they some of them, most of them, understandably, will hold their nose, hold their noses. And would indirectly support the domination. So the domination is political, directly political, and indirectly ethnic. In a sense, as I said, the Indian community is trapped. If it opposes, it will be dealt with condignly by the PPP. And so, fear will keep most of them quiet, those who disagree. And others will go along based on partisan support. Because, you know, they will say, well, are we devil better than somebody else devil? So the PPP ultimately is going to dominate the whole society. But the direct domination would be felt by African Guyanese and to some extent Amerindian Guyanese. But Amerindian Guyanese don't have the critical mass to upset the plans. So they're not going to get the brunt of the attacks. African Guyanese represent a critical mass that can stand in the way of the PPP's grand plan. That is why they're beaten, they're bribed, they're psychologically attacked, they're criminalized. Because they hold the balance between total domination and little or no domination. And so one has to see this security, this new spy agency in that context. Now, why would you want to spy on Guyanese overseas? We know they're uncomfortable. With some of us who live overseas. And so part of this is meant to get at critics of the government who live overseas. But that's not the whole story. They're not going to create a whole spy agency to spy on Rickford Burke and Mark Benchop and David Hines and so on. They're not going to create a whole spy agency to spy on a couple of people. And in any case, why do the government of Guyana believe they can go in Canada and America and England and spy on Guyanese and they will be allowed to? I don't nonsense.
Well, I was waiting to ask that particular question of you because I read recently where where China has been found to be operating what I call underground police stations in the US, and I think Canada perhaps tracking down the citizens and harassing them and stuff like that. Just last week, I think in the US, one of these two officers were arrested operating this underground police station for China. And Guyana is apparently the PPP government, I should say, has a very close relationship with the Chinese. A relationship with the US is definitely uncomfortable with. What is the likely impact on is it bilateral international relation between the US and Guyana? for all of these copycat actions from China. And well, we know, for example, that Huawei phone, the US is totally against Huawei infrastructure being used in any country that it does business with. But yet they seem to be going along, and every now and again you will see actions like the arrest of the PS that signals that, you know, something is not right. What are the risks the PPP is taking?
There is no risk because the PPP is not going to do it. They do not intend to spy on overseas Guyanese. They just putting that as a mask. They know that it is illegal to do that the US is not going to allow them to do that. If they want, they can tell the US to spy on us or ask the US to spy on us. But the US is not going to allow some foreign thing to come in. They're ostensibly going to spy on Rick Ford Burke and Ben Sharp and Hinds, and they end up spying on the US. You think the US stupid? And you think the PPP that's stupid? So it's just a mask. The real intention is domestic. Because the president gives direction, and the president can give direct direction that I want intelligence to be gathered in Berbice or in Buxton or in wherever.
Let me ask you to make a direct comparison, if I can call it that, because you basically have been a fighter through the years. The Forbes Burnham government was claimed to be dictatorial. I know the military had created WPA recognition handbook. I have a copy on my desk even as we speak. Was the Burnham government this bold to spy on citizens, its political opponent and so on?
All governments do that. All governments do that. I mean, let's not think. All governments spy on citizens. It is the extent and the objective.
And so we're still to see the extent and objective of this government. It's 90 minutes.
We know the objective of this government. Mm-hmm. And we know the extent. This government has the monetary, financial capacity to do things that the Burnham government could not dream of doing.
Thank you. It's now 90 minutes past the 8 o'clock hour. Usual time to open up the lines. Anything you want to introduce or say before I do so? Thank you. 90 minutes past the 8 o'clock hour. You're tuned to the Guyanese Morning Time. I'm your host, the BUXTONIAN, Kidaki Amsterdam. The lines are now opened. So let's have those calls. Let's hear your thoughts on these issues that were discussed this morning. Let's get your 2 cents, as we say. The protest continues outside of GCOM today at 11:30. And so I encourage you to go out and join. Duty calls there, you know, I am the man who wears many caps, and so I am not likely to be able to go there today, but I encourage you to go out and continue to support that protest. It was a good show of support yesterday. Dr. Hinds, I don't know if you followed that protest, but you can share some thoughts on what you saw yesterday if you did.
But I learned of the protest till late in the afternoon. Sometimes I don't hear about these things because I don't have enough time to spend on Facebook, and so unless somebody tells me directly, I wouldn't know. So I saw some clips, I think on the Mark Benchop show, anything is better than nothing.
Anything better than nothing. Dr. Hinds, see you on Guyanese Morning Time. The lines are open. 6225933 is the number to call. Call and let's talk the thing. As usual, I'm checking to see if there's some voice notes for us to play. One person is saying to me, that girl went to collect money for Bar Jack Dio. From Sue. Well, that too is a possibility, I wonder. So like the viewers are not interested in talking to us today. And here also is the first call. So I'm dealing with a voice note.
Good morning, Mr.
Call all the
Yes,
line,
sir.
please.
Yes.
Tanaki. Good morning, Dr. Hines. You know, I just want to let this be known.
We can't do all at the same time. I'm dealing with a voice note. I usually ask you not to call while a voice note is playing because we get
That
disconnected.
fraud is fraud. And in no way we can put it in another section. If the boots were on the other feet and it was the P at the APNU or APNU supporters or was APNU or whatever it is, you would have seen chaos in Guyana. How they found them committing fraud and everybody would have been speaking. Everything would have been upside down. So we, the people of Guyana, should not take this lightly. No local government election could be legal with that kind of fraud. You understand? And we need to take it very serious. And don't take no apology for an answer. We could not have apologized to the PPP if it was the APNU supporters or APNU themselves. Why must we take apology? This is blatant fraud. And persons supposed to face the blunt of the law for it. Because if the boots were on the other feet, they would have been taken to court, up the court step, all around the place. Okay? So let GCOM do their work and the police do their work. We are not taking no for an answer. And we are not taking apology for an answer any longer in Guyana. Because it cannot be given to the Africans. It must not be given to nobody else. Okay? That's how I'm seeing it. And we need to see that local government election do not put its head up because fraud is fraud. Thank you.
Thank you for that voice note, and thank you, caller, for holding your life.
Morning, Kadaki, and morning, Dr. Hines. Great program this morning. I support the protest in front of GCOM, and it should continue up until the election is actually stopped, which means not go forward. Based on the conversation this morning in reference to this new spy agency that the PPP is constituting, and my thing is, once you create facts on the ground, it's hard now for anyone to come and dismantle. So I think it's imperative that everything should be available for us to stop it from even taking place. Because, as I said, once you create facts on the ground, it's hard to replace. And when it comes to the races, Indians and blacks, in your opinion, Dr. Hines, for 23 years, the PPP have created facts on the ground. They have torn, especially African Guyanese, to a begging people. So the APNU came in, tried to change that, and the people then would not have it. So the more, in my opinion, we allow this to go on, it is when we try to change some things, the people are going to rebel because they're not accustomed to getting handout and all that type of stuff. So, in my opinion, it is imperative that every move the PPP makes, illegal, racist PPP makes, should be challenged. And based on the PNC history, do you believe we are going to get any way in terms of challenges? Because I do not see the PNC, and especially African Guyanese, doing anything to stop this runaway train. That's my take. And I would like to find out, get an opinion on what I just said.
Thank you. Dr. Hines, you want to respond, or let me go with voice note?
Well, let me respond. I don't want to be unkind to the PNC, because organizations evolve. I do think we have to be concerned because of the divisions in the PNC. The divisions, I think, is hampering the party from being decisive on these issues. So, I would hope that they're able to overcome their divisions and to take a common stand as a party on these issues. I think we have to give the party the benefit of the doubt and to say once the conditions change, meaning once they're able to overcome their internal differences, the party would be and could be more decisive.
Thank you. Carla, thank you.
I would like to go back a little bit to 20. I just want to make a point. So I'll bring 2020 back just to make that point. Back in 2020, the election time, of course, it was a very contested result because these people were installed. So when we went to the situation where we summed up all of the evidence that we had and so on, we find all these abnormalities and illegal things in all the boxes and so on, right? And then it was taken to court by petition, or the 60 and the other one. And then the PAP government, they jumped through hoops and they did everything that they could have done to make sure this could not be heard in the court, or this evidence could not be presented. But over the last couple of weeks or so, we find the same evidence, or the mirror of the same evidence, are displayed in the public. We've seen all these things that are happening that we thought that happened in 2020, right? And the courts decide to knock out whatever and not giving us a hearing or whatever. And now we've seen all these same things, this same evidence that we have to produce in the court. They didn't want us to show it, but now we see these same things play out again. So these are evidence again. So I'm calling on the decision makers, the judges, and even the ABC countries and so on, for them to have a look at it and see what is going on, see what we were talking about all this time, and you guys were screaming on the top of your voices not to have this heard, and now here it is again. We've seen this happen again. That's one point. The other point is that there's a bunch of people in the Kams Street prison, right, who would love the opportunity to come out and say, you know what, I'm sorry to be committing this crime, and if they would be given, if they would be let out free. So I'm saying this to say that an apology is not enough for somebody to do it, and for someone to be committing acts against, illegal acts against, something that could mess up our constitution, which is already mess up our country. So if somebody was caught stealing or doing whatever to manipulate our election process, that person should be put to the court, and not the representative, the vice president, whoever come out and say sorry, because sorry is not enough. This is a matter for the court, because they put other people in the courts, to the courts without any evidence at all. People from the coalition, they drag their names through the court, right? And now they have zero evidence of any wrongdoing on those people's behalf. But now they are caught red-handed, and guess what? It seems plausible. So they make an apology, and it's plausible because it's there. So this needs to go to the court. That's my take today. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlo. Voice note.
Good morning, my fellow brothers, old viewers. I think buying of this spy equipment is not only to spy on the soldiers and the police, but to spy in bedrooms to see who are going in and who are coming out. Have a great day. Bye.
I think there's a little bit of tantalizing in that voice note there. Whose bedroom? Caller. Voice note.
Good morning to that, your listeners. Protest is a serious thing. When you take to the streets and you start protesting, you don't turn back. You don't talk about the next day and the next day and the next day. When you go out there, it's to get where you want. And when you get where you want, then you come away from the streets. Protest is a serious thing. When you take to the streets, you camp out in the streets. You do everything in the streets there. You cook, you sleep, you do everything right there. Make camp. You don't come from the streets.
An interesting perspective there, Dr. Hines. You don't come off of the streets. Yesterday morning, a viewer asked, what if the people were to turn out to GCOM yesterday to protest? What's next? I said then I would recommend that the protests continue because it means that the opposition was really able to build a momentum. And so they should hold on to that momentum. Let me take this call and then I'll ask you to address that perspective. Call it live.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Kadaki. Good morning, Dr. Hines. This morning I am feeling hopeful and I know that God is working things out because you know what? The PPP, they just can't help themselves. They've been doing this thing for such a long time and they get exposed and now they're quiet. But I want to say that Guyana is pregnant right now to be delivered. And when we get this turning pain, we need to push and we need to push hard. And in whatever way Guyanese could support the protest they need, if it's just sending something to buy a little water, but the protest must continue until either Claudette step down or they decide to call off the election. We're committed to this cause and I know that God is in control and He's going to work it out. Have a beautiful day and God bless you as always. Bye-bye.
Thank you, caller. Dr. Hines.
Yeah. What question you want me to address?
Well, I was asking you about the perspective of the viewer that listen, protest, you don't come out for the streets, you camp out and you go as long as it's necessary to get what you want. Are we having a
I don't have any argument with that position.
So these quote unquote 2 hour protests that are taking place now, are they likely to achieve the goal?
I really don't know. You know, we have to, you know my theory. You do what you have to do and you ready yourself for what that lady just talked about, the pain. You don't know when the pain will come and it's time to go for delivery, pack your bag and be in readiness. To try to predict and to get in front of the thing, I just do what you got to do.
Be battle ready. Call A Live. Good morning.
That's it.
Call A Live. Good morning. Caller, you're live. Good morning. This call is not ready for us. Dr. Hines, as I there are a lot of voice notes to play and so on, but it just dawned on me. What just dawned on me? That the government passed a bill yesterday, I think. Oh yes, that bill that has now increased the size of the appellate court, the number of judges. Not less than 5, but not more than 9. Currently, I think it should. The law was that you shouldn't have more than 5 appellate court judges. The PPP did say that they were going to make moves to increase that number, and so a bill was tabled yesterday for its increase from a minimum 5 to a maximum 9. Your thoughts? What? I mean, on face value, the argument is that there's so many backlog cases and the small number of appellate court judges is making it difficult to get rid of these backlogs and so on. Is there more in the mortar than a pestle in this particular matter?
Yeah. And one can, no, I was surprised that the opposition voted without perhaps some amendments. You know, there's something called court packing the courts. And the PPP has been losing cases 2-1 in the appeal court. And I think in widening or increasing the number, they're giving themselves a better chance of winning cases, political cases in the appeal court, because they're going to be able to pack the court. And it would give them an easier chance. I was surprised that the opposition didn't challenge it some more. Because from a practical standpoint, yes, the 9 members in the court would expedite cases. But it's the political cases that are of concern here. That if the PPP is able to pack the courts, then the chances of them getting judges that are partial to them hearing these cases is better, increased.
Thank you there. Voice note.
Kadaki, good morning. She went to collect my money from Barry Jack. So, let me tell you something good. She's been a politician for the long years and years and years, but she's broke. You hear? She need to answer. She's talking about PPP, PNC, how she worked voluntarily for them for years and whatever. She need to answer the question, what did she do with the money that she took, the grant that was given out to people to do business, and she also was taking it to open a chicken farm, and all now the chicken farm in open. What she do with the money? So the money done, she going for more. That is how these people stay. She's selfish and she's only thinking about herself and her immediate relatives, because she have they all depend on her, so she's broke. Kadaki, good morning. She went to collect my money from
Okay, I'm not sure who that voice note is referencing. There's several interpretations, but let it pass.
Hi, good morning, Kadaki. Good morning, Dr. Hines. Dr. Hines, I have 2 questions for you. The first one is it that with the security or the spy agency being created in Guyana, is it the same model that we see in the Sudan, where Omar Bashir created this spy agency that morphed into what is today a militia group and is today fighting the army of the state? Do you see something like that happening in Guyana? And the second question is, we know that democracy came out of a philosophical concept. The question that I have, why is it that countries who are less philosophical end up with a degraded form of democracy?
Caller Live, good morning. Dr. Hines, you'll get to that after this call. Caller Live, good morning. Caller, you are live, good morning. Caller not ready for us. Go ahead, Dr. Hines.
Yes, it is similar to the Bashir agency that was set up. And we saw there in the Sudan, that agency became a militia now fighting against the army there. Is there a possibility of that in Guyana? Well, God help us that we do not get to a civil war. Because if we get to a civil war, there's nothing stopping the government from turning these paramilitary organizations into militias. So yes, there is a possibility if we get to the point of a civil war like the Sudan. I hope we don't get to that point. The other question was about the philosophical underpinnings of democracy.
Yes.
Kidaki, and I didn't get the last part because he was breaking up.
Basically, he's asking why is democracy so terrible in these parts of the world, if I can call it that, where there is not much philosophy or philosophical.
Well, yeah. Well, look, if you start with a particular definition and a particular model of democracy, and then you impose it on the society, then you're going to get the problems that we're having here and countries like ours have. You have to first of all start with the nature of the society, and then ask yourself what model of democracy is best suited for the society. You know, the Americans, for example, they moved away from the British monarchy and they created a quote-unquote republic, a republican form of democracy, as opposed to a monarchical form of democracy. They looked at their society and they said, this is the nature of the society, and this is the democratic model that is best suited for here. But the British literally imposed a model of democracy that worked for Britain on its ex-colonies. And that's where the problem began. They didn't look at the nature of the colonies, soon to be independent, and ask, what model of democracy is best suited? They just impose a British model of democracy, which is a model for a homogeneous society and not a heterogeneous society. And so that is the problem we have in a place like Guyana. There was not much philosophical thinking that went in to the model of democracy. We, of course, believe that the model that is best suited for us is a consensual form of democracy. So you move from a majoritarian democracy to a consensus democracy. So you move your threshold from 50+1 to, let's say, 2/3. And if the law says that you need 2/3 of the legislature to pass a law, you then force compromise on the leaders. Instead of having a strong opposition and a weak government, you have a strong government. Because in all societies, governance matters. Because neither Indians nor Africans want to be governed by the party of the other race. And neither party has been allowed to govern the other race. The Indians never allowed the PNC to govern them. They made it difficult for the PNC to govern them. Africans are making it a little bit easy for the PPP to govern. No, but generally, Africans have not made it easy for the PPP to govern. And so when you have a situation where people don't want to be governed by the other ethnic group, in a sense, what you have to create is a joint form of governance. We call it power sharing, we call it consociational democracy. But it's a joint government. That is, you move the opposition from outside of governance and bring them inside the governance. So just as within parties, you have people who are going to sometimes oppose what the party is doing. In government, you bring the opposition inside. So rather than people outside opposing, because when you're outside opposing, opposition in a society like ours means destabilization for good reason. And governance means destabilizing the opposition. If you have a joint government, then you are forced to come to consensus on issues. You are going to get some, what law or policy as on a day-to-day basis that can't wait 3 months to come to consensus. You know, if you had a joint government, these people could not have proposed a bill like they proposed there about a spying agency. They would have had to agree to it in the government. So by the time the bill goes to Parliament, you already make amendments within the government. No Parliament with a majority can just ignore the opposition. Opposition has to go in a consensus or a consociational democracy. The PPP is not sharing its power with the PNC, and the PNC is not sharing its power with the PPP. The PPP power comes from its supporters and its voters. And the PNC and whoever other opposition parties, their power comes from their voters. So nobody is sharing somebody's power. You see, when we hear power sharing, we are thinking we are going in there to share with the PNC, or we're going in to share with the PPP. No, we are going in there for our share. Our share. We are in there. There would have been no local government election called by the PPP if coalition supporters were in the cabinet. The police would have had to act on these complaints, because a coalition minister might have been the Home Affairs Minister. Power is important, people. It's better to have half of it than to give up all of it. I know some of us are days with this power sharing thing because we feel, you say, oh, we go share power with them people. You're not sharing with them. You are going in for your share. If they were based on these numbers from the 2020 election, bogus numbers, what is 51-49? If there were 15 cabinet seats, the coalition would get 7 and the PPP would get 8. And the rule is that you need 2/3 of the cabinet to agree. They can't do nothing without you 7. So all the advantages taken on us now would have been zilch if we had a power-sharing consociational government. Black people, you all got to start thinking strategically. Don't gamble for 100 and then you lose 100 and you get nothing and you're outside opposing. The days are not over. You go to the election, you try to win the most votes. You win the most votes, you get the most cabinet seats. You fall short by 1-2%, you get 49% of it. And our elections, Guyana, 51-49. So you have a 15-member cabinet, you either get 8 or 7. Either way, you're in here. That has to be our thinking. They're trying to tell us that, oh God, we need a strong opposition and the demographic change and either party can win and all that. Either party can rig, as the PPP is doing, not win. And GCOM would not have been able to do what it is doing if the coalition was in the cabinet. That's where the action is. The action is in the cabinet. All the bills that the PPP is passing would have to pass muster in cabinet. So you're making your amendments to bills in cabinet. You're not waiting for it to go to Parliament and then you, in the opposition, you make amendments and they say, go to hell and pass these laws. We have to start to change our thinking about governance. We've been fighting this majoritarian winner take all for 70 years. The PPP used to have a built-in racial majority. It has lost that racial majority, but it makes up for that with the bloated voters list. Those who migrated, those Indians who migrated, just making Indian a minority. They left the ID card. And they're still voting as we saw in 2020. So the PPP, through rigging, still has a racial majority. You all get that in your heads. This majoritarian winner-take-all thing has to go. You want to see your people in government making decisions. You try to get the most votes so you can get more cabinet seats. Do not gamble where you lose all and end up with nothing. That is the bind we are in now. We have to fight to change the rules, to ensure that we are not marginalized from power. It's better to get 49% of the power than to get zero. Right now we have no power over army, over police, no power in parliament, no power in cabinet. And if the PPP has its way in this thing that coming up that they call the election, you'll be no power at the local level. We cannot exist like that. There are options. And the option is win or lose, be in there. We have to start thinking differently. You don't care if it's a donkey the PPP put there. If they want to put donkey to represent them, that's not your business. Your business is your representative in there to represent you. And the struggle will continue between us and them. But before anything leaves that cabinet, we have to agree to it.
Thank you. It's 2 minutes to the 9 o'clock hour. I have 2 voice notes I want to play, and then Dr.
Morning, Mr. Amsterdam. Protest is like breaking down a wall. Yeah, keep hammering it until the wall come down. It's not you lash today and then you wait till next week and you lash again and then it come down. Protest is a continuous banging until you get what you want. So we have to be on the streets every day, until we get Ms. Claudette Singh out. Until we get biometrics, until we get a new voters list, and until the fraudsters go to jail. Thank you.
Thank you. Voice note.
Mr. Amsterdam, good morning to you. Listeners of yours. Mr. Amsterdam, the only thing Jack Deal wants is a war in this country. That's all Jack Deal needs. Jack Deal wants war. The AP and UAFC and the WP, everybody, Jack Deal not listening to you guys. Jack Deal want war. It's only war can stop Jack Deal from doing what we do. Trust me. That's my take.
Thank you for your voice notes. Thank you for your call. Sorry to those who couldn't get through. Sorry to those who didn't make use of the opportunity when the phone was answered. Dr. Hines, 9 o'clock in the morning, Tuesday morning. Wrap up, please.
Well, I think I wrapped up there just now in that long monologue.
Okay, very well. Thank you. Who do you have on tonight?
I know I have Norman Brown and somebody else on tonight.
Alright, so join Dr. Hines at 7 this evening for another program of Politics 101. And definitely tomorrow morning I'll be here on the Guyanese Morning Time. I should be talking with a young Buxtonian who is doing well for himself in the academic realm. I think he has just been accepted at one of the overseas universities there. I don't want to call the name incorrectly. I can't remember if it is Oxford or if it is but we should be spending a few minutes talking with him. And then of course there are lots of other issues which we need to talk about. Sitara Gyal, your name calling again. Sitara Gyal, Priya Manichan, your name calling again. There's chaos at the CPC, and so hopefully tomorrow I'll get to discuss with viewers the madness that is happening at CPC for teacher training. Right? I understand the fat guy instructed or was instrumental in his mother being employed as some player, let me call it that, over at CPC, but that has not put an end to the madness. Madness upon madness is happening over at CPC. Our children are going to be continuously left behind, despite prayers saying that no child should be left behind, because the teachers themselves are being left behind. We have to examine that issue. We're going to talk about it. And while we talk about Priya and the Ministry of Education and CPC, I will not fail to talk about the Guyana Teachers Union. I understand they have found their voices now, but you know what they're using those voices for? to tell people prepare for Labor Day parade, and they're going to be awarded prizes for the largest contingent and best dressed contingent and stuff like that. That is what the union is about. Competitions like the Guyana Police Force. What is the competition they're looking after now? Best dancer or some nonsense to that extent. These are the things that these institutions are doing, these organizations are doing when they have more serious business to take care of. Right? I certainly support the call for protests to be continuous in front of GCOM. I can't forget when I started with the few viewers and supporters and so on. We were going it for about 3 days a week. Good? It eventually whittled down to 1 day a week. And so we are back at that point yesterday. The first indication was that people will return perhaps next week. But then, with the encouragement of those who were present, protest is going to be out at GCOM today again. So you can join, you can support. If you didn't make it yesterday, at least you can give it an effort today, so that you will add to the number, or you will maintain the number, because some people most likely may not be there, and so you can function as a replacement for them. Thank you for joining. I'm reminding you of that anniversary dinner and dance on the 15th of July. Someday in this week we are going to take a program and deal specifically with ticketing issues and seating issues and menu issues and stuff like that. Alright, stay tuned. Start putting your, as we like to say, 2 cents aside, so that you can get yourselves your tickets and you can be part of the fun, part of the action down here. In the